Is there any one particular thing you're working at or working on?
The Jackson 5. I don't care about myself, I care about my group, that's all. They're my first concern.
I think certainly the tribute belongs to both Diana and yourself for having the foresight to even see them, to bring them up through the ranks.
Well, I didn't do very much. Diana just brought them to me.
This is the story of a child who transformed a family that transformed a generation, and how fame transformed Michael Jackson. This is the Thriller Effect.
When the Jackson 5 came to Motown, I was there when they did the audition.
Diana was my baby, so I went to her and asked her, would you do me a favor and present this group? She said, well, can I hear them? Yeah, I played it. All I needed was that little topping on the cake.
There were actually 2 signings of the Jackson 5 to Motown. The first time they were signed, Berry Gordy was in Los Angeles.
Our signed contracts had got snagged due to legal issues.
One attorney. The first time they called me, every word out of their mouth was "F you." They didn't know me and who I was. I either said "F you" or "Go F yourself. You're gonna get everything." They said, "Go see our lawyers on some street in Manhattan."
Richard Aarons had put a halt to their momentum with Motown.
In the months before Mr. Gordy's party, between August 1968 and March 1969, progress seemed to stall, so we kept rehearsing, performing, and revisiting our usual haunts, guys and gals, and the high chaparral.
We worked in more than one club that had strippers in those days.
Michael was the money maker of the family. Joseph had him up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning in these dives, making money for the family.
Mother got restless. "Are you sure these Motown people are going to come through, Joe?" He told her to be patient, trust the agreement.
Berry Gordy was trying to buy my contract from Atlantic Records. Berry Gordy and Joe Jackson had put the word out to people in the radio land not to play any of my music. Berry Gordy said to me, he said, "Gordon, you ain't got nothing coming." You know, he hung up the phone.
They found out my father was a big shot in the Musicians Union, local 802. He became president. The second time they called me, their whole demeanor, there was not one so then they gave me 5%.
Then we did another performance.
We went to Berry Gordy's mansion estate in Detroit, and we auditioned.
Everything was so ornate, immaculate, and clean.
And all the Motown stars were there, from the Supreme, the Temptations, the Marvin, the Miracles.
There was a fountain and marble Greek statues. Inside there were butlers and white people working as household staff. Once we were poolside with mics and instruments, we looked out across the lit water and kept spotting the faces of the greats who were watching.
When they walked out on that stage, they were ready for anything.
Marvin Gaye, if Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, and we had to sing their songs in front of them.
One wink from Michael, then we started killing it.
He was singing a song that Smokey had written. It was a song for a man who had lived through love and pain.
I never thought about it, I just did it and it came out.
I wrote this song before Michael Jackson was born.
He was just incredible.
Who's Loving You is Michael Jackson's song. That's his song now.
By the second verse of My Girl, they were clapping, dancing, and cheering, even whooping when Michael turned on his moves. Our audience was into it.
He could dance like James Brown. He sang like Jackie Wilson. Even though he was 10 years old, he was singing like he had been around for 30 years.
They were just a young family that was just dynamite.
We spotted Mr. Gordy front and center, clapping the loudest.
When I saw them perform, I was really floored.
They loved it.
They loved it.
He loved us and wanted to sign us.
I believed that all people would love what he was doing.
Then they invited us over. Then we had dinner and everything.
You know, after the concert we did for them.
One of the kids said, well, are you going to sign us? And Michael sort of smiled like, of course he's going to sign us.
Anna Ross came over to us. She said she wanted to play a special part in our career. That's how it started.
We knew someday that, we'd be discovered. We had to know that they were good. We had to know that they could win talent shows, and we rehearsed them so they could be the best.
Very, very happy.
I had a vision it would happen.
But it was not in Detroit. It was in Los Angeles.
Motown was synonymous with Detroit. They were now moving to LA. Not everyone could make the trip. Motown had established a very specific production machine. The Motown machine did 3 things better than every record company in existence in the 60s. They made money, they created hits, and they centralized creativity. And it was Berry Gordy who was the center of Motown's creative hurricane.
They have a certain sound that a lot of companies, they try to get.
Well, yes, but I attribute a lot of that to some of the greatest writers. I mean, we're Holland Dozier Holland, Holland.
We lost 3 of our best writers at the peak of their success.
We did so much work for Motown Records. The Holland brothers and myself decided that we had earned a better contract. We went on strike.
Eddie Holland was the chief lyricist, and Lamont Dozier wrote the music and supervised horns, strings, and backing vocals. Brian Holland wrote music and worked directly with the Funk Brothers, and he actually ran the recording sessions.
The cycle of success is a vicious cycle because it will change them. As people get success, they change.
It was a personal disagreement.
We had to iron out some things and did what we thought was best for us. As we had been approached by several record companies that wanted us to start our own label.
Berry Gordy, he can be stubborn, 2 egos, 2 stubborn bulls, clunking heads. Whole thing should have never happened.
And after we couldn't get the type of deal that we wanted at Motown, we decided to leave.
When lawyers get involved, you might as well forget it.
We settled a lawsuit after a long, big fight and great expense.
It's a waste of energy and time.
You want to grow. As they say, only the strong will survive.
Many people thought we would not make it without Holland Dozier Holland.
The signing of the Jackson 5 effectively ended a fantastic era of Motown history. Berry Gordy had reasons for sequestering the Jacksons at Hitsville between 68 and 69.
When Motown left Detroit, there was no warning, no announcement, and no way of preparing for it. And that's the move that they had to make. It left all of us kind of like, what are we going to do?
And the Motown machine was a daily operation. Every morning, Berry Gordy held meetings with the assigned producers. Punctuality was strictly enforced. Tardiness resulted in a lockout. Then he'd play the submitted tracks by each producer and writer, and he'd ask the other producers for their thoughts. He held his opinions for the end. There was no number 2 and no committee. Motown was a dictatorship.
How long were we in Detroit? About a year, 2 years, guys? We was in Detroit recording our music.
Berry Gordy sent the Jackson 5 to Hitsville to begin work on tracking songs for their debut album. Berry Gordy told him he wanted hits.
We first recorded at Motown's headquarters in Hitsville, USA, West Grand Boulevard, Detroit. The studio was in a cellar. Our first Motown producer was Bobby Taylor.
I co-produced the first 6 hits.
The track would be played by Motown musicians. We would put our vocals down after.
Bobby Taylor brought him down here, and he said, "Hey guys, I want you to meet the Jackson 5. Oh, we said, "What?" And we looked at these little kids and we just fell out laughing, you know, Jameson and myself.
Tito and Jermaine had to play on the Steeltown songs. Dad explained that Motown didn't expect them to play on our records.
Like they have certain musicians, it's a certain sound they get.
That sound was the Funk Brothers. Benny Benjamin and James Jamerson were possibly the greatest rhythm section in history. Benny Benjamin died of a stroke in 1969, and this may have been the beginning of the end for the Motown sound. James Jamerson was Motown's bassist from 1959 to 1973, and he was the first Funk brother. He would say, "I could pick up things from listening to people speak, from the intonation of their voices, look at people and get a beat just from their movement," unquote.
And you're talking about some hungry children. But Michael was a workaholic. I liked the way he wanted to work.
Bobby taught Michael and me how to use a studio mic properly. He'd say, "Guys, the mic will give you the volume, so don't worry about projecting your voices."
I listened to him. "Why are you screaming and trying to be like James Brown?" He said, "Man, that's cool." I said, "It's not if you want to make records, it's not." I said, "James Brown's the only person that does that. And he does that because he can't sing worth a dime."
First, Bobby sang a song, then Michael repeated it note for note.
Michael Jackson worked 20 hours a day. That inspired me. Name a child at 8 years old that can soak in stuff for 20 hours a day. Michael took me to the limit.
Bobby spent those summer weeks producing us and cutting tracks that would feature on our first album.
Taylor's credentials included the recent R&B hits Does Your Mama Know About Me and I Am Your Man. He also jammed with Jimi Hendrix. Bobby Taylor was coming off his first hits with the Vancouvers, but Bobby Taylor saw the Jackson 5 as a throwback to vocal groups of the 50s. He saw Michael as a soul singer. He chose compositions for them that highlighted Michael's vocal range and the Jacksons' harmonies. Bobby Taylor saw Michael as a soul singer, not a pop star. Mr. Gordy did not agree. Berry Gordy wanted crossover success. He saw them as a young Sly and the Family family stone. He wanted a pop star. He needed a pop star. Berry Gordy was not happy with the tapes Bobby Taylor sent to Los Angeles. He also didn't agree with the song choices. He told Bobby Taylor the songs were outdated and the services were no longer required. He fired Bobby Taylor and warned Taylor that as soon as the Jackson 5 were rich, they wouldn't even remember his name.
I was told by Berry Gordy, he says, I'm going to keep you broke. No, you're going to sue, but you're going to need the money. I haven't been paid yet. I helped make Michael Jackson. Nobody can take that away.
And Bobby Taylor promised he would sue. And this would just be one more lawsuit for the chairman. Holland Dozier Holland was about 3 lawsuits deep by the time the Jackson 5 were signed.
That work allowed us to ease into the recording process in Detroit. As a team, prepared our original material in Los Angeles.
How can I make the Jackson 5s get hit after hit after hit? Because the cycle of success will affect the writer. He'll all of a sudden have a #1 record. I don't want that. So I said, I'm going to start a writers group called The Corporation. It's going to be like 4 or 5 of us.
It's The Corporation, which involved Alphonse Mizell, Deke Richards, Berry Gordy.
And I want to put these 4 or 5 guys together, and I'm very confident I'm going to get it here. I want to start preparing for this group.
Me and Freddie, 2 college students from the East Coast, just hit LA, and we dug Motown to death, but we had our own thing. I Want You Back did not have the Motown sound to it.
I Want You Back. It was supposed to be cut on Gladys tonight. Alphonse and Freddie were due to cut this on Gladys. And the night before, Berry called up and said, look, forget Gladys, I've got these new kids to rewrite the lyrics. And the kids turned out to be the Jackson 5.
I'm going to lead that group because I don't want anybody to get credit on this record.
After the firing, Mr. Gordy finally sent word to Joseph Jackson that the album would be completed in Los Angeles.
Motown was in the process of setting up a division in Los Angeles.
We were signed with Motown, and Berry Gordy decided to move his office to Los Angeles because he wants to get into the film business, and he brought us over there with him.
Those were truly wild days for me and my brothers.
Joseph could almost smell success.
We flew to California from Chicago.
We came from Gary out to California.
First time I got to Los Angeles, I couldn't believe how people were living.
We arrived as newly signed Motown artists.
Driving Ferraris and Rolls Royces, people living in the hills and the palm trees.
When we first got here, we were on Queens Road. We first stayed at the Tropicana Motel on Santa Monica.
It was like being in another country, another world. To come from our part of Indiana, which is so urban and often bleak, and to land in Southern California was like having the world transformed into a wonderful dream. I was uncontrollable back then. I was all over the place. Disneyland, Sunset Strip, the beach. My brothers loved it too, and we got into everything.
Before we went to Queens Road, Tito, we lived with Diana Ross.
Half of us lived with Diana Ross for 1.5 years, and the other half lived with Berry. Berry lived at the top of the hill, and Diane lived just like a block away.
Like kids who had just visited a candy store for the first time, we were awestruck by California. Trees had oranges and leaves on them in the middle of winter. There were palm trees and beautiful sunsets, and the weather was so warm. Every day was special. I would be doing something that was fun and wouldn't want it to end, but then I'd realize there was something else to do later. Those were heady days.
Bobby Taylor failed to make the hits Mr. Gordy required, but he did put them through it in rehearsals.
While they were doing this and getting these hits, they were being groomed by Suzanne DePass.
It took a lot of rehearsals. Suzanne DePass, she helped choreograph some of the I Want You Back stuff.
And so she took them down and bought little hats, those first little hats, the hats that they had, and the clothes and the colors. And I mean, she was phenomenal.
Suzanne DePass, she was our manager with my father at the time. And she was very helpful and instrumental in the early days of our career.
She bought the little clothes for them, so when they were ready, she said, so I got them dancing, I got them moving. They already knew they were doing it, but she said, I'm just having them practice it and get ready.
By the time the brothers landed at LAX, they were prepared. Berry Gordy rushed the boys into the studios to put down vocals for the songs that the corporation produced.
Next you know, we were in the recording studio after that. Kids at the school never knew that we were going to the recording studio recording I Want You Back.
The Jackson 5 was the first group they recorded at the Sound Factory in Hollywood. I Want You Back was the first record we recorded.
The Funk Brothers may have played on early versions of I Want You Back, but officially, the Wrecking Crew were the musicians. The Wrecking Crew were the Funk Brothers for Hollywood, where at least 50 musicians can claim to have been part of the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew was the house band for Cher, the Monkees, the Beach Boys, Barbra Streisand, and the TV shows Bonanza, MASH, Batman, Green Acres, the films Cocoon, The Deer Hunter, The Godfather, Field of Dreams, many more.
And I was one of the session players.
And we had a social worker. She made sure that they didn't work us over 3 hours.
We would go after school. The recording studio was right around the corner, right on Fairfax.
They would come in later and do their vocal.
Once again, the Jackson 5 blew away the seasoned professionals who could not believe that a 10-year-old was delivering clear professional vocals, virtually mistake-free, while being coached up by the chairman of Motown, the legendary chairman of Motown.
All of us had lyrics and cues to learn. We'd have to play those songs in front of our fans when they heard the demo for I Want You Back.
Wilton Felder on bass, Gene Peldo on drums, Joe Semple on keyboards, Clarence McDonald also on keyboards, Don Peake and David T. were the other two guitar players.
We have different producers.
Michael was very professional at that age, very curious about the recording process, the studio, what was going on, very observant.
They would, write little things, a piece of paper and put double-edged tape on it, and the back of it will say, "Hit me." They did all sorts of little jokes and things like that. When it came time to work, he was the hardest worker I ever worked with.
It really took hard work. We went in the studio, we changed it about 4 different times.
When I would tell Michael, I said, well, say this or do it this way.
He knew just what it takes. Everybody can't do that.
And Michael would go in there and he'd do his own ad-libs, and that's him. He made up all that stuff.
He would do it better.
It took us a day and a half to finish the whole song.
Jermaine did my part and I did his, and we changed it around and we just played with it a lot.
We mainly did what they had us to do, what they told us.
After the session was over, he'd come to me and Freddie. How did you do a simple chord? We'd say, if you want to get in the songwriter, master
3 or 4 chords.
3 or 4 chords, you could write millions of songs just from that.
He understood all this.
And he does a great job.
He'd also do surprise pop-ins in the recording studio nightly.
He pretty much do a song a day, but we came back to finish it the next day to really complete it.
Yeah, I had to do an overdub. That was the first time I got to see Michael Jackson. He was doing the vocal on I Want You Back. I'd never seen anything like it. Just absolutely fantastic.
Michael, we thought was good. The other 4, we could have done without.
Playing those tracks on it's the greatest feeling in the world. When you've got this thing in your head, you put it materially down on tape, and it's what you wanted. It's great.
Berry Gordy is one of our biggest helpers. He listened to it before it's published.
Just to make it good is wonderful. It's wonderful.
I have 4 records, and I want all of them to go to #1.
Wonderful. Taking a song and leading it to the right direction, giving it the right flavors to make it a hit.
And so we came up with 4 brilliant songs. They're produced by the corporation. I have these records in the can.
Diana Ross was his biggest artist. She's the one who brought us out.
Mr. Gordy invited the press to LA's Daisy Club to introduce the world to the Jackson 5. Michael told the Diana Ross discovery story, and Berry Gordy shaved 2 years off of Michael's age. He was now 8 instead of 10. 2 weeks later, the Jackson 5 were opening for Diana Ross at the Los Angeles Forum, and they smashed it.
Just a couple of questions. Diana, how does it feel to be on your own?
Good. Feels.
How would you assess your performance tonight?
I was relaxed and comfortable, and I just had fun. We've worked a couple of other places before we got here, so I'm basically used to the act. It's exciting because I'm getting a chance to do a lot of different things.
Is there any one particular thing you're working at or working on?
The Jackson 5. I don't care about myself, I care about my group, that's all. They're my first concern.
Like, certainly the tribute belongs to both Diana and yourself for having the foresight to even see them, to bring them up through the ranks.
Well, I didn't do very much. Diana just brought them to me.
And I didn't do very much. Their families did the raising.
I am the one that discovered Michael Jackson when everybody else turned him and them down. They owe me millions of dollars.
So Diana didn't find us first, but I don't think we'll ever be able to repay Diana properly for all she did for us in those days.
The Jackson 5 had been introduced to the world. Diana Ross and Motown will be credited as mentors and with their discovery for years. Slowly, Gladys Knight and Steeltown, as well as Bobby Taylor, would receive their respective credits. Next episode, the Jackson 5 come face to face with their crazy new fandom.
These are the Jacksons. Kids from all the other schools would come to Fairfax High School, Pandemonium. They noticed us being on the Ed Sullivan Show.
It's just very forward. I mean,